Welcome back. In my last video, I tried to solve some puzzles on chess.com, and I did solve most of the ones that I tried, but I felt like the entire time my mind wasn't completely focused into chess, and I made several obvious errors, so I'm going to try to do it again today. I usually don't do puzzles, or any other chess-related thing 2 days in a row. At least I try not to. I try to, go back and forth from different things, but I'm going to do puzzles again today. If you're new here, I'm not a titled player or a chess coach, anything like that. I'm just a random person trying to get better at chess. Puzzles supposedly is one way to do that. I'm doing fairly well in puzzles. I hit 2100 yesterday, and I seem to do much better when I stick to my checklist, which is I look for checks and evaluate them. I look for captures and evaluate them, and if that fails, I look for threats. Here I do have several checks. I can check with my queen in looks like 3 different places. I think the one over there is bad. Their rook would take. I think the one here on d6, their queen could take. So what about this one down here? If I check on d8, the king can come out, and I could just come back to where I am and check again. So that's probably not it, because I think that would be my only check at that point. No, if I checked down there and came up, then I could check with the knight, which I think they would have to capture with the pawn, and then that would be checkmate, wouldn't it? Maybe that's it, but I can also check with the knight now. I think if I checked with the knight on d7, they would capture with the bishop, and if I checked with the knight on c6, they would capture with the pawn, and I wouldn't have the mate. So I'm leaning toward this check down here on d8, because I'm pretty sure, I was going to say their only legal move is to go, but it's not. They can block with the bishop. Okay, so if they block with the bishop, I can check with the knight here. They can't come out because my queen is still sitting down there on d8, so they would have to go back. And then I could check up here on b6 because my knight is down there on d7 guarding b6, and that would be mate. So I think I have mate either way if I check on d8. I'm going to try that. Oh, they just went up there. Well, then I think it's this, because my queen's cutting off all these squares, so their only legal move, if I check with the knight on c6, would be to capture. And then I think this would be checkmate here. I'm going to try that, and this has to be checkmate. Okay, next puzzle. Once in a while recording these videos, I doubt that whether or not I clicked the record button, so that's why I'm glancing over here, is to make sure that my video is recording. I don't know why I doubt that. Black to move. I think I can just get my king out of the way, and that would be check, because I'm in check right now, so I have to get out of check, and I think I only have 2 legal moves. I either have to block with the rook, which doesn't seem like a good idea, or just get out of the way, which is a check. They would only have 2 legal moves because my G rook is cutting off this whole file, and my H rook would be hitting all these squares, so they would have to block with either this bishop or this bishop, and I would just take them in turn. And if they blocked with the dark squared bishop first and I took it, I think that's just checkmate. So if I move out of check and they block with this bishop and I take it, that leaves only blocking with the other one, and I'll take that too. So I'm going to move my king to g6. Hopefully that's right. Oh, they did block. Well, I'm confused as to why the puzzle didn't continue, because again, I'm pretty sure they only have 1 legal move, and then I'm pretty sure I would only have a mate after that, so I'm going to look at the analysis board. Sometimes I do that in case I missed something and they may have had more than 1 legal move. But yeah, after this check, it's a mate in 3, I move there, they block, I take. Yeah, they only have 1 legal move, bishop to h4, and I only have 1 move that's mate. So yeah, that puzzle had no excuse for not continuing. But I got it fast enough to get 9 points. That was a 2200 rated puzzle, but it has a 97% pass rate. Now that's hidden just behind my camera view here, but yeah, the pass rate is 97%. So I'm guessing that the rating on this puzzle is going to come down. Even on the low rated puzzles, I usually don't see pass rates that high. Next. I am playing with the black pieces again. My opponent has a queen, but it is over here. They can check me, so I want to be, aware of that. And they are also keeping my king from moving. But I have something here. As always, let's look at checks first. I think I only have 1 check in this position. Rook to f2. That would give the king 2 different options, 3 different options. If I checked down here? No, not that one, because my bishop's covering that square. So yeah, my bishop's covering all this. My rook would be hitting all of these, so they would only have 2 options. And either way, I could check them again because my bishop's guarding that square. But that seems like a pretty reasonable move to make. What if they come out and I check and then they go in there? Then I could check with the other rook, then they could come out. Let me try to look at this a little bit more systematically. If I check here, we've determined that they only have 2 options. Okay, let's say that they went to g1, could check them again, and that would be protected by my bishop, and then their only legal move would be to go to h1, and and then I could bring the other rook and that would be mate. Okay, so I found a mate if after I check on f2 they go down. Okay, so what if they come up? That's the one that looks like they can get away. So I have to consider that. If they come up to g3, would I still want to check on g2 and let them get away here? Because then if I follow with the check, they get away again. No, they can't because of that. Okay, so I think I have a mate either way. They came up here, so I think this is it, because my other rook is still cutting off this whole file. My bishop's defending that, and then my new g-rook would be cutting off this whole file, leaving them to go in there, and I think that would be checkmate. Okay. It was checkmate. Oh, and the theme was doubled rook instead of checkmate. How about that? All right, next puzzle. All right, I had them in check, and they have blocked with the bishop. So sticking with the checklist, let's look at checks first. I think, and I usually do my queen first if I have a queen. I do have a check with the queen. I have 2 checks with the queen. I think both of those are really bad. In the case of taking the knight, they would just take back with the pawn. And in the case of taking their e5 pawn, I think they would just take back with their f pawn. So I think both of those just lose a queen. I don't think either one of those opens up anything significant. And I think my only other check is capturing the bishop. Okay, so if I capture the bishop, I can pretty well expect that they're going to take that with the queen. And then would I have anything after that? I mean, I could take that bishop too, but they have 3 ways to capture back. I also wonder whether or not I still have castling rights. For example, if I take this bishop and they capture back, is it going to be legal for me to castle? And then I would have a rook pointed at this undefended pawn? No, their queen's defending that pawn. Never mind. What about castling the other way? I would have a knight and a rook pointed at this pawn, which only the queen would be defending at that point. I will say this, that in all the puzzles I've done on chess.com and Lichess, I don't think castling has ever once, in the hundreds, possibly thousands of puzzles I've done, I don't think I was ever supposed to castle. Yeah, so I have no idea in this one. Are there any captures besides this one? There's this pawn, which threatens the queen. Okay, let's see. What if wait, maybe that's it. Because it does threaten the queen, and it also threatens a fork. The only problem, I guess, is that it undefends this bishop. So, what do they play if I take the pawn? Oh, I'm also threatening a check over there. Very nice. If it ever got that far, that would undefend this pawn, so... Okay, so knight captures d5. What does the opponent play? They can't take with this bishop because that bishop's pinned currently. My guess is they would move the queen someplace, but where would they move the queen? I assume they would want to move the queen someplace that would keep defending this bishop. So let's say it drops back one, because they wouldn't go down here because my knight's pointed at that square too. I don't think they would take the bishop because then I would be able to fork. So if I take this pawn, I am threatening a check, kind of threatening a fork. And if the queen dropped back, then what would I do? Then would I come over here and check on f6, which would open up this? I have no idea. I just know it's probably not taking this first because then I can't take this pawn. So I'm going to try to take that pawn first. And if it's wrong, we'll find out why and we'll find out what the right move is. So, come on. That couldn't have been their best move because now I'm going to fork and win the queen for the knight. Okay, well, we're going to try that and then win the queen. I'm going to look at the analysis board. There's no way that them taking that bishop was the best move. That's why I almost didn't play this because I knew they weren't going to do that. Okay, after the opponent's blocking with the bishop, which apparently was a blunder, what they should have just done was move the king either to f7 or to e7 or even to d8. But this puts me at +4 because of this and only this, and it was not their best move to take my bishop. Okay, I knew that. Their best move was to check me. Wait, it's changed its mind a few times. It keeps flipping back and forth. Okay, their best move is queen to c5, which is here. And then, okay, that was it. I would have checked them on f6. All right, their next best move is to take my bishop with their bishop, in which case I would get their queen. And their next best move is b7, which is what I thought they would play, in which case I would take over here and it would be a check. Okay, so I did figure out the situation here, but then the imaginary player with the black pieces made a much worse move than those. At least I'm pretty sure it's worse than that. It was definitely worse than those other 3, so yeah, of course I'm going to go here, and then wherever they go, I'm going to win their queen. After this, it looks like they would take my knight, and then I would take their bishop down here, and they would use one of their rooks to take back, and then I would long castle, because I can't short castle with their bishop over there. Okay, I do understand that. Oh, and that minimal amount of stockfish there kicked my computer's fan on. That's probably because it's a little warm in here. I try to keep the thermostat a little higher than the average person because it saves a lot of electricity, but that means that the air is warm, so the computer fan kicks on more often. All right, I'm on a roll. I'm doing pretty well. Let's do another puzzle. Well, they've come after my knight, which kind of makes me want to move it. I can move it there, which is a fork of their queen and rook. If I do that, I'm going to assume they want to move their queen, but I don't know where. They might just come up one or move over. They probably won't go all the way to d4 where I could take it. Okay, it's not a check, so it's not quite as forcing. Do they have anything on me? Like, they can check me, which leaves my queen facing their queen, so that might not be the best option here. Because again, this is not forcing, but this is. A check is much more forcing. And if I don't take the bishop... Oh no, I was going to say my queen would be undefended. Well, my queen would be undefended if I just moved over one, but if I moved up or took the bishop, my queen would be defended. Okay, so let's say I went here and they checked me. I would take their bishop. Then our queens are facing off. Would they take mine? And if they did, I would take back, and then I would still get their rook. Well, I guess they could move it at that point, but I would be up. But I should look at checks first because that's my checklist. So if I check with the bishop, I don't think I'm going to check over here. They can block that 3 different ways, really 4 different ways, but probably one of those first 3. So I'm not going to consider that one. Let's consider bishop taking f2 check. I assumed their king would move over one, and then I would check here and win their queen. That looks awesome. Let's try that. They did move over. Okay, well, I can't beat that, can I? They can take my bishop, but then I'll get the queen. I did get the queen with check. Okay. That one was rated 1960, and the pass rate is only 57%. I'm guessing a bunch of people forked with the knight rather than checking with the bishop. But this is also one that is pretty easily solved with using the checklist. I have to constantly remind myself to look at the checklist. In this one, I saw my knight in danger, so I started thinking about where I can move the knight, but the checklist starts with checks. Next puzzle. All right, as we just said, let's start with checks. I do have a check here by capturing this knight. I think I would just lose my queen, and I don't have a good follow-up. My only good follow-up would be pushing the pawn, and I guess they could just take that too. I have another check with the queen, which is down here on e1, and my bishop's already cutting off some squares. My queen would be cutting off these squares, and they can't block with anything, so the king would be forced to go over to h2, at which point I would check on f2, then they would block with the knight or move into the corner. They moved into the corner, I would take the pawn. We'd be getting close to checkmate. That's kind of what I expect them to do, because here they have to move over. And when I check here and they move into the corner, I think I would take the pawn with check, and then they would have 2 choices. That one's pretty complicated. Now, if they go here and I check here and they block with the knight, well, that's easy. That's checkmate. And the way that some of these puzzles have been going, that might be what they do. But I would have a much harder time solving it if, when I checked on f2, they went to the corner, take the pawn. And then, again, that would give them 2 choices. But I think either way, I would get the knight after that, wouldn't I? Okay, well, let's try it. Let's check down here on e1. Okay, they did go over there. Well, this makes sense, doesn't it? Or I could just check here now and win the knight. Should I check over here on d2? No, because then when they go toward my bishop and I take the knight, they get my bishop. So I should check here. And when they move, I check again. I'm still protecting my bishop. Okay, let's try that. Okay, they did go to the corner, so it's a good thing that I consider that possibility. I assume I should check again, but I don't know what I'm going to do after moving over other than just take the knight, and then I'm even on material with my opponent. So let's think about this. If they go to g1, if I try to check them again at that point, they take my bishop. So if I take this, they go to g1, and I take the knight. I'm still protecting my bishop, but I'm even on material with my opponent. My opponent can check me, but I could block with the bishop. Okay, I'm going to try that. They did come over there. Oh my, I'm pretty sure it's taking the knight, because any other move loses the bishop immediately. Well, it's probably that. Let's try it. They did check me. Well, don't I have to block with the bishop? What do they play if I block with the bishop? They're going to pull their bishop in and, point at the pinned piece, but the pawns would be protecting the bishop at that point. I'm going to pull the bishop over there. I mean, because I had other options to get out of check, but that one seemed like the most obvious, because then I don't have to sit here defending it from their king anymore. Oh, and that one has a pass rate of 38%, so I feel really good about getting that one. Very nice. And I know it's sometimes my famous last words, but I do have time for at least one more. Fingers crossed. Next puzzle. Oh my. Well, I don't have much development done here, and for some reason I've gotten my queen out before getting any of my other pieces out. I don't know what kind of opening this arose from, but why is my queen here? What is it doing? Well, let's look at checks first. As far as I know, my only check is bishop captures f7. I assume they would take back, and then this knight would be pinned, so then I could take this pawn, but I'm down a bishop for 2 pawns. Or should I take that pawn first and pin the knight to the king? I mean, to the queen. Yeah, I think that's my only check, and I don't think it gets me anything. So I'm looking at captures now. That's one capture. That's one capture. I think those are my only 2 captures besides the queen taking the knight, which surely is not a good idea. All right, well, I paused the recording to save you some time. I looked all around. I can't find anything that makes sense other than taking that pawn as I suggested, but you always have to ask yourself, what's the opponent going to play after that? And one thing that they might play is taking my similar g-pawn. Then they'll be pointed at my queen. So then I'm not sure what I would do at that point. Would I take their knight where my bishop would be defending? And then when they took, I would take and I would be up a little bit? I really don't know. And I would hate to end this video on a failed puzzle, but let's try to be reasonable about this. Do they have any all over the board? But I'm going to take that pawn. If it's wrong, we'll go to the analysis board and find out why. Oh, okay. They did take my g-pawn. Well, I think if I take the knight with my bishop, I think they're going to take my queen. And then when I took their queen, then they would take my rook. So I think it makes sense to take the knight and trade queens there. And I think that they would trade queens because if they didn't, I would get their rook too. So let's try it. Okay, well, nothing else makes sense other than taking the queen, right? Okay, wow, that one has a 61% pass rate, which seems reasonable, and it's rated 1938. Okay, I do actually have enough time to try one more, but sometimes these puzzles take a little bit longer than I'm predicting, so I'm going to stop now. I think I did okay. I feel a lot better about this session than I do about the one I did yesterday. Hopefully you're getting better at chess too, and if you're doing something to get better at chess that I'm not doing, let me know, and maybe I'll give it a shot. I'll see you next time.